Hey everyone, Gaijin Goombah here. This is kind of interesting for me because I don't usually do follow-ups, but a lot of you guys in the last video about the sad truth of international censorship, you guys had some good points, and I wanted to address them. Granted, very few of what people had to say was just mindless blather, but the majority of you guys left some really poignant thoughts, and I really like that. Even if you're disagreeing with me, which I don't mind, like, in every opinion piece, I never try to sit there and say, I'm right, I'm the best, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the whole point of what I do for the channel is to get people to think. And if you're thinking, that's all I care about. So, one of the biggest points that a lot of people were talking about, and it makes sense in my mind, is if the show is uncensored, we're talking about South Park, if the show is uncensored, why does the game have to be censored? This is a weird freaking phenomenon. And I had experience with this prior. So, for example, when I was in Japan, that was back when Aki was really, really big into the Resistance games, for PS3. I had bought a PS3 here and brought it over because I can play PS3 games in Japan, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I bought Japan's version of Resistance 2. She had Resistance 2 here. What I came to find out that was really interesting is that in Resistance 2, there's a lot of dismemberment, there's a lot of gore, there's a lot of blood, etc., especially with stuff like the Ripper, when you're just, like, sawing chimeras in half and stuff. The Japanese game didn't have that. And that really blew my mind, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why that was. And the reason why is because Japan's had a long, long history with at least dismemberment. If you look at any of the old samurai dramas from way back in the day, like the 80s and stuff like that, you got people's legs and arms and stuff flying all over the place and, like, huge gushes of blood. And, even in the mangas are just as bad. There was a running gag in the old anime club that I was in college where we would make jokes about having to make donations for Ichigo because he would lose so much blood in every episode. And that really struck me as weird. And I actually had to sit down. I can't remember if it was with Hutch or if it was another one of my Japanese friends. And I just had to ask, why is it that so many games in Japan are so censored to take out any sort of dismemberment or gore, yet in other mediums such as comics and movies, it's left in and preserved? And he told me the reason for that was because of people's perceptions of what these mediums or who these mediums are for. Manga and movies generally revolving around a much more mature audience where, for some reason, don't ask me why, this is just how it is. In Japan, they have this perception that a lot of video games are still just for kids. Now, is that fair? No. I definitely don't think that's fair, considering how far we've gone with video games as a medium. But does it make sense? Kind of. It's all about perception. It's funny, I had a lot of people accusing me of being all for censorship and bowing my head to Big Brother. The people, for those of you that said that, you do not know me and you do not know the work that I've done in the past. I have made it very, very clear in my utter dissatisfaction of how, at least in the US, ultra gore is completely fine and okay to show to everyone apparently, but any hint of sexuality has to be removed. I very recently did a small rant about that with Bravely Default in the Bravo bikini. So, no, I'm not all for censorship. Trust me on that one. Like, I've seen enough Monty Python sketches to understand that in Europe full frontal nudity isn't necessarily that big a deal, but it's a huge deal over here. So, to those of you accusing me of following censorship, you can just throw that right out the window. Here's something to chew on a little bit. I had talked with Curb about this, and I'm actually going to be in one of his Curb blogs. I don't know when it's going to be up. But we talked about this. We talked about how South Park feels like a show that was made by Americans for Americans, if that makes sense. Now, that's not to say that other people of other cultures can't enjoy it, because, I mean, that much is obvious. You guys have made that obvious enough. But the satire and the jokes revolve around what's going on here in the U.S. And so we get it. We can understand it. We don't take things to the nth degree because we understand the satire behind it. But it was made by Americans with Americans in mind. So the jokes may not necessarily transfer very well to other regions and other cultures. So that being said, a lot of people want to blame governments for controlling what the population's seen here. And no, it's true. Like a lot of you said that there are places like China, North Korea and whatnot where the government really has an iron fist about what the public has access to. I understand that, and that's fine. But that's not like that everywhere. The countries in Europe and the US are not the only democracies in this world. Like, it's not like that. So, I gave this some thought because it's a really good point. But I came to this conclusion, and that the government puts censorship and creates censorship laws to try and keep the peace with the general population. So, stuff that's offensive like swastikas in Germany, etc., etc., I believe that the government bans that kind of thing just to keep the population from freaking out, like hardcore freaking out. Now, I understand that these games like Stick of Truth aren't going to be for those people. They're not made for those people. They're not marketed to those people. But I just can't imagine how crazy of a storm it would be if that was made public. And I can't imagine the civil unrest. Also, with that being said, do I think that's fair? No, I don't. But I can understand the reasoning behind it, because the government is responsible for maintaining the peace and order of the entire country. Now, if that means having to look out for the general population who may not be intelligent enough or worldly enough to understand the satire of the jokes and only see it offensively, that's what I mean by we just have to deal with it. Because that's how the world works, and that's how localization works, and that's how international law works. Again, I don't think it's fair. I don't. But I recognize that that's how the business works. Business plays by rules and laws, and it's especially true in the international stage. Now, to those of you that are saying, well, we have rating systems. You know, we've got the PEGI system, or we've got MT and E and whatever. Yeah, I agree. I agree that the entire world could benefit from having these kinds of rankings in place. But that hasn't stopped people from causing uproar over here, has it? Again, I agree that it's not fair for governments to ban content when all it's about is choosing, personally, making that adult decision to either to interact with something or to not interact with something because it offends you. I get that. But but unfortunately, it isn't that simple. And it's not simple for very unfair reasons, and I understand that. But with everything that I've been exposed to, everything that I've worked through, working with LAI, talking with people from the IGDA, this is just how it works. It's super unfortunate. And the best thing, the only thing I think we can really do as people is to just take some sort of action. A lot of you in Australia have been saying we finally have an 18+ rating. That's phenomenal, because I know you guys have had such a struggle trying to get stuff to fly down there. And I understand that it really sucks that it's not being used effectively. So just keep fighting for that. But you have to bear in mind what the governments are trying to do, and I'm talking about the non-dictatorial governments. They have to keep the peace. Even with rating systems over here, everyone will still go gaga for one reason or another. And my case in point has been and always will be that here in the US, ultra gore is completely okay, but any sort of nudity is just met with such an upheaval. It doesn't matter if it's M, if it's AO, whatever. If there's nudity in a game, or even nudity in a movie, everyone flips out. And it's not fair. I admit that. And I'm just repeating myself at this point, but I'm trying to drive that point home. I don't believe it's fair. But this is the sad truth that we live in. That's why that video was called The Sad Truth. Because it isn't fair, and it isn't right. But that's how the business has to be done. Can we change it? Yes. Should we change it? Yes. And I would encourage you guys, write to your government to try and take action to get that done. But until we can get to that point, for game developers, these are the rules that we have to work with, and they have to be honored. They have to be maintained. So, hopefully, we'll get that change someday. I hope we get that change someday. But right now, it's just not there. So. But anyway, that's all I've got for this session. I really appreciate the way that the majority of all of you have been really, really civil, even when disagreeing. I can't stress that enough. That's really rare to find in any YouTube channel. I expected there to be a lot more trollish comments. There weren't, so good on you guys. Keep talking about this. I'm still reading comments. I may do another reactionary video. I don't know, because this is definitely a heated topic worth discussing, so I want you guys to keep discussing. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Either way, I'm not gonna take it personally. Just keep talking, guys. That's all I want you to do, is to think and talk and take part in this giant discussion. So, anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. So this is Goombah signing out.